Discipuli praestantissimi, matres, patresque discipulorum, fratres, sorores et amici, necessarii atque propinquii omnes, hac die candidissima vos salutamus. Convenimus aetera, sicut in loco secundo ut longe gratularemur his hominibus doctis, qui honorum motorum laboribus doctrinam adepti eruditionem suam demonstraverunt. For the one or two of you who might not have caught that, let me translate the Latin. Most illustrious students, their mothers and fathers, brothers, sisters, and friends, all close associates and intimates, we greet you on this most brilliant day. We have gathered together in the ether, as in a propitious place, to honor from a distance these learned people who have acquired a discipline and demonstrated their learning through the efforts of many years. Welcome to the 2020 Humanities Consortium commencement, in which we congratulate graduates from the Arabic program, Classics, the Humanities program, Judaic Studies, the Medieval Studies program, and Religious Studies. My name is Mary Jager. I am head of the Classics Department and the Humanities Consortium. Commencement is my favorite of all human ceremonies, a day of real celebration for all of us. You students celebrate a substantial achievement. Traditionally, your friends and family members get to meet your classmates and teachers. We faculty get to meet your friends and family. We see you in a new context and from a new perspective. But we also say farewell, sometimes forever, to students we've gotten to know and care about. And it is hard to let go. We've got you whipped into shape. You're choice students now who know how to do the work and usually remember to complete the exams entirely and put your names on your papers and sometimes even to staple them together. That is the problem. We've all gotten comfortable together. This term we have gotten really comfortable. We have zoomed into each other's houses. We have seen housemates, bookshelves, and wall art. We have met their cats. Which means it is time for you to go and become uncomfortable again. For us faculty, this is the end of a road taken together. For you, it is the beginning, the commencement of a new journey. Comfortable, commencement, congratulations. I'm using a lot of words that begin with co, none of them even the Latin for crown, which we all now know too well. But let's learn some more Latin. I did a little exploring. Where does the word commencement come from? Surely I thought it was originally Latin, like pronouncement or announcement, but I couldn't recall an obviously related verb, such as commentio with two M's that meant to begin. And a search in the big Oxford Latin Dictionary turned up no such thing. Odd. I turned to the even bigger Oxford English Dictionary, and there I struck pay dirt under commence. The word comes from Latin by way of Old French. It started as comminitiare, really to begin. The verb initiare, to begin, and the prefix com, coming from the Latin intensifying prefix co, but with one M in the first com, not two as in commencement. The doubling of the M in modern French and English says, no, in tones, the Oxford Latin Dictionary is etymologically erroneous. No wonder I couldn't find it. All that in a journey of less than 2 feet from one dictionary to the other. And this, among other reasons, is why today's ceremony is called commencement, with one too many M's. You're not going to forget that now, are you? It is the beginning of realizing, for all you've achieved, how much there still is to learn. And I submit it is an intensified beginning. Remember that prefix, co, a beginning of a journey to graduate school or law school or internships or work. For all of which beginnings we have tried to give you tools or to help you sharpen those you already have. Skills at reading texts closely, at interpreting works of literature and art, at changing perspective by the close analysis of religion or of archaeological remains. And taking up and sharpening those tools has required the development of discipline. As I said, this is the beginning of a journey, and this travel metaphor probably touches a sensitive point because so many of you have had to change or cancel travel plans, or plans for work, or internships in a new place. This year has overturned expectations that have come to seem routine and traditional. So we're going to have to revise tradition, or look at the tradition from a different perspective. Young people, no matter their gender, have traditionally had the Odyssey as one model for the journey of life. My high school yearbook was even called the Odyssey. It is the story of Odysseus, who, as you recall, was part of the expedition to retrieve Helen from Troy. He went along reluctantly, leaving behind his young wife Penelope and his infant son Telemachus. He was gone for 20 years, and his achievements at Troy are famous. If you haven't read the Iliad, now is a good time. And his adventures during his return are even more so. If you haven't read the Odyssey, now is also a good time. Fine, a life of travel and adventure. A traditional model for the young. But then I'm not sure why. Odysseus lost all his men on the return from Troy as a result of his own lack of discipline. And the later authors looked at him from a different perspective, and rightly, I think, showed that he was kind of a jerk. The thing about tradition is that you can work within it, look at it from a different perspective and find in it something useful. And at this point, I could go on, and some of you have heard me do so, about Odysseus shutting the confined space of the Cyclops cave, taking up and sharpening what tools he had. But I'm not going to. After all, he was shut in for less than 2 days, rank amateur. I'm going to talk about Penelope. Penelope stayed home for 20 years. She went nowhere. She never appears outside the house. Penelope supervised the running of the palace on Ithaca, and she used the tools she had. For years, she wove and unraveled a shroud for her father-in-law as a stalling technique to keep from having to marry one of over 100 besieging suitors. And she brought up her son Telemachus. In current parlance, she engaged in social distancing, took up textile work, and homeschooled her kid. The events of Penelope's confined life were, granted, not perhaps as exciting as sailing past Scylla and Charybdis or encountering the Cyclops and escaping from his cave, but it was a life, and one that took tremendous wit and discipline. Wit and discipline that proved a match for her husband's own. I direct you to the passage about the bed. Penelope's achievement, making it possible for Odysseus to regain his position as king of Ithaca, was no less real for having taken place under restraint. She lived in her head, plotting and contriving, dreading a possible impostor Odysseus, and weaving. Scholars have pointed out that as Odysseus moves horizontally across the Mediterranean, to and fro, like the shuttle weaving the weft of a loom, Penelope moves vertically within the household. She goes up and down stairs, from her upstairs chambers to the great hall below and back again. She is the warp of the fabric that the two weave together into a life. Now, we all, no matter the gender, have been required by circumstances to live for some time the life of Penelope rather than that of Odysseus. For you who have done so for your final quarter, it has been a hard adjustment, and the journey in confined spaces will continue to be hard. But it is also an achievement. You have had the experience of disciplined working and waiting in a time of great uncertainty, and often, like Penelope and Odysseus, kept apart from both friends and loved ones. You have had the unusual experience of living both the warp and the weft of the Odyssey. I've taught some of you this quarter, and I've seen you at a distance live a disciplined and waiting life, and do so with good cheer. You've written well thought out and researched theses, even while fulfilling many other obligations. You've confronted stress productively, either with early morning solo runs or with cooking experiments, some of those that have left Odyssean scars. Nothing can take from you your accomplishment. And for that, you have not the simple gratulations from the Latin gratulor that I used at the beginning, but all of our sincerest congratulations, which, as you now know, begins with the intensifying prefix co.
Hello, I'm Malcolm Wilson, Professor of Classics. In the first year of the Peloponnesian War, Pericles delivered a funeral oration in honor of the dead, in which he gave an account of the causes which had led to Athens' greatness. Our students who first read this speech, often in the fall of their freshman year, find it formalized and frigid. But closer reading shows that Pericles is trying to explain just why a citizen would risk his life for the sake of the Athenian Empire. What's remarkable about the speech is that it avoids any appeal to false emotions and pursues an honest, even banal account of human motivation. Why lay down your life for your country, Pericles asks. not least of the reasons he gives. Shopping at Athens is to die for. It is the custom here, on this very different and very happy, albeit strange occasion, to deliver a speech in praise of our graduates. And since the graduates are being praised for graduating, it follows that it must be something good that they're graduating in, because otherwise we wouldn't be praising them. To praise the graduates, then, is to praise the course of studies they undertook. And this is where we get to that delicate point where we have to confess that they've graduated in classics and in the humanities, in medieval studies, Judaic studies, and religious studies. The parental and grandparental eyebrows are raised and difficult questions are asked. Since you don't have a trust fund, my dearest, will you be applying to law school? What? You only read Latin? If you spoke it, at least you'd get a job at the Vatican Bank. So, what did you get for laying down 4 years of your life? Probably not great shopping. You can see that Pericles' task is easy by comparison. Now, as purveyors of this learning, we must answer the twin charges of encouraging financial irresponsibility in our students and luring them into anachronistic irrelevance. As far as the money issue is concerned, I can assure you that even in these difficult times, your prospects are good. And since you've been trained to take the long historical perspective, you can comfort yourself in the knowledge that your income will be many times greater than the median income of an Athenian in 429 BC. Indeed, only 200 years ago, Thomas Geisford, in his Oxford Christmas sermon, could urge upon his flock the study of Greek literature, which, he said, not only elevates above the vulgar herd, there you go, but also leads not infrequently to positions of considerable emolument. Now, though these emoluments may be now less considerable than they were, nothing about these studies prevents you from pursuing money if you wish. The classicists, J.K. Rowling and Ted Turner, are examples of success in this regard. You will not be indigent because you majored in humanities, and you will be comfortable if you apply to your professional work the basic lessons of industry, diligence, and care that you learned here. You may even get a considerable emolument if you reread Hesiod's Works and Days, to my mind, the greatest of all financial self-help books, and take its homely lessons to heart. Now, some of our graduates have gone into law and other graduate programs. Some are teachers, many others in fields incidentally related to the humanities. What they all share in common is a commitment to the ancient notion of the ars vivendi, the art of living. And the idea of the ars vivendi is that reason, without being overbearing, is able to organize and balance and to some extent regulate our desires. Part of this art is the ability to distinguish means from ends. Means have value only insofar as they are useful to ends, and ends themselves have value only if they do not contribute to anything else. That is, only if they are useless. Aristotle said with deliberate paradox that only what is useless can be truly good and valuable in itself. Now, Aristotle is almost always wrong, but in this respect, he was absolutely right. And by pursuing these studies, you have shown that you understand the difference between means and ends. So now you can say with pride that what you did for the last 4 years was useless, in the best sense. These abstract arguments are borne out by our students' activities. The sheer delight of knowing and doing is everywhere evident, independent of what profit might come of it. One of my students' passions for weaving has guided her study in the ancient world. She has given presentations on spinning and weaving in my classes, constructed spindle whorls out of computer CDs, and kept my warps and wefts separate from my wefts and woofs, Penelope notwithstanding, and has produced some of the most beautiful fabrics that I've ever seen. Another constructed a model to illustrate the Greek mathematician Eudoxus's brilliant theory of planet retrogradation using concentric bicycle wheels. Others have traveled across Oregon to calculate the circumference of the Earth using a method that dates back 2,200 years. All of these things are beautiful and useless, and they are the reason we do the other things we do. Now, by answering the charge of leading you into financial irresponsibility, we have pretty much answered the charge of anachronistic irrelevance. You chose to study these things not because they are profitable, but because they are good. They are good not because they are means to some different end, but because when they enter the soul, they affect the way you feel and act, and they become part of your intelligently regulated life, and that's the ars vivendi. Through studying the lives of Abraham, Buddha, Achilles, and Agamemnon, we may learn to distinguish what is genuinely humane from the false emotions that lead to such destruction, and grasp a thoughtful pattern of human life in all its richness. Reason, informed by natural desire, and desire regulated by reason. And this seems especially important now in our present circumstances. In order to be sensible, thoughtful, and intelligent, we must cultivate the intellectual virtues and train the emotions and desires. At the most basic level, the task of learning Hebrew, Arabic, Latin, and Greek is fiendishly difficult. You are forced to be mathematically precise, to observe how words, clauses, and sentences are assembled, to detect ambiguity, to be alive to subtlety and nuance, and then to understand the significance of the thoughts conveyed. This is a virtue preeminently nurtured in the study of the ancient languages. It is also, by the way, a good training for the law, if you're still thinking about those positions of considerable emolument. In order for reason and desire effectively to inform each other, we must be exposed to a great deal of human experience and make it our own. We need to wonder what we'd say to God if he commanded us to sacrifice our only son. We need to wonder whether our unexamined life is worth living. We need to wonder what it really means to believe our earth is at the center of the cosmos. In the ancient record, it's all there. Art, science, literature, dirty graffiti, insult poetry, satyrs, chasing nymphs, all the things we enjoy and all the things we must understand about ourselves and regulate. The books we study, the Bible, for example, and the classics, are enormously influential in our common way of life. Our society is simply a set of developments and reformations of these sources. Without knowing where our beliefs, morals, and tastes came from, how can we understand the world around us or be autonomous in the regulation of our lives? Without knowing what ways the ancient world was different from our own, how can we understand that our way of life could be different from what it is? Well, all right, I'm getting carried away. We were committed to the modest truth, even if it is banal. This is not the only body of influential cultural material in the world, however important it may be for our tradition. And I don't want to deny that you can regulate your life intelligently without this or that humanistic knowledge. In the end, this is not the only path to the ars vivendi, but it's a good path. Most importantly, you chose it because it helped you make sense of your life in a way that other studies did not. And because you chose it, you did it well. And finally, what Pericles was most interested in. Are there rational reasons for an irrational commitment? There's a story that in his old age, Aristotle was living on the island of Euboea. He was trying to figure out why the water in the narrow strait between the mainland and the island, called the Euripus, ebbs and flows 7 times a day. He thought and thought, followed every method he had ever developed for trying to find out. But in the end, obsessed by his desire for knowledge, he despaired of a solution and flung himself into the Euripus and drowned. It is a story of insane, heroic passion for knowledge, but it's a false story. The truth is plainer and more banal. First, Aristotle did have a solution to this problem, because Aristotle always had a solution to every problem. But more importantly, Aristotle was not committed to knowledge in that heroic sense. He was committed to an intelligent life, in which desire for knowledge played a large but balanced role among the desires. He worked diligently and calmly to bring that balance to a world awash in the ebb and flow of radicalized opinion and thoughtless commitments. Not dramatic, perhaps, but he lasted longer than the heroic Athenian Empire. My fondest hope is that, like Aristotle, you may take this thoughtful balance of knowledge and emotion and work diligently to fill the world with humane good sense. And may you all be led to positions of considerable emolument. Congratulations and good luck.
Aidan Kolar, Madeline Albrecht, James Andersen, Delaney Armstrong, Elizabeth Figlio, Delaney Fisher, Henry Hawkinson, Lottie Heater, Rebecca King, Anselm Lefebvre,
Aaron McAndrews, Trevor Nau, Robin Phillips, Kelsey Ramsey, Kevin Roper, Ezra Samuels, Alex Shadle, Daniel Snell, Eric Sparks, Shade Streeter, Brielle Waff,